All right, hello. I'm just popping on for a little while. Oh, let me fix my microphone. All right. So, I just wanted to share 5 ways that I keep up with my spiritual wellness. So, if you're watching the replay, go ahead and type replay in the comments so that I can come back and say hey to you. And of course, feel free to answer any questions that I ask throughout the live recording. I'd still love to hear from you. I'm just going to go make sure everything is set up. So I am broadcasting everywhere I want to be. I hope everyone's doing all right. If you're watching and now live, let me know in the comments so I know who you are. Let's see. Settings. I don't know how to share this. Oh, well, I guess I won't do that because I don't know how to do it. So I'll figure that out later. All right, so like I said, I am sharing 5 ways that I keep my spiritual health up today, and you can feel free to comment as we go. I can see some of your comments in the comments box, and I'll try to interact with you as we go along. But for your spiritual health, it's just the same as keeping up with your emotional, your mental, your physical health. All of these things are super important. Hi, Susan. It's good to see you. So it's just as important to keep up with your spiritual wellness. And so today I'm just going to talk about some of those spiritual activities that I like to do. Feel free to share your own spiritual health activities in the comments, like I said. And so let's get started with some of mine. The first thing that I like to do is personal reflection. And I use a variety of tools for personal reflection. Journaling and tarot are 2 of my favorite ways to reflect on my personal whatever's going on inside of me. It's just a way to check in how I'm doing in all areas, in physical, emotional, mental health, but also with my spiritual wellness. So I take a moment and I stop and I reflect on what matters to me, the values that guide my life. I remind myself what gives my life meaning, which is really the purpose of spirituality. And I check in on whether my actions and my thoughts and the way that I'm speaking, whether those are aligned with what I believe in, what makes my life worth living. So again, I reflect on those values, how I am demonstrating them in my thoughts and in my actions, and then I think about the spiritual energy that I receive from both being around other people and that I receive from being alone by myself, and I make sure that I'm getting the appropriate balance. Everyone has a different level of like how much time they can spend with other people and how much time they need to themselves. A lot of times this is described as being extrovert or introvert. I myself am more introverted, but everyone needs to have time with other people. It's just kind of a scale of where you are on that balance. So I just make sure that I'm getting the appropriate balance of time with others and time on my own. I dig into any challenges that I'm currently facing, and then also what sustains me to get through those challenges. Because that's really important too, is knowing how to get through the challenges when you are facing them. I remind myself of the things that bring me comfort and peace, and I make sure that those things are readily available to me. All the things that bring me comfort and peace, I want those to be available. Because if they're not easy to access, I want to make sure that I set them up that way. See a couple of comments come in, so I'm going to take a minute. Hey, Kelly. Hi, Selena. Hi, Heather. Thanks for watching. And so again, when I'm doing these personal reflections, I use journaling and tarot primarily, and they change just depending on my mood. Sometimes I'll think about these things that I just talked about as journal prompts and just see where my writing takes me. Sometimes I'll use tarot and I'll use these questions or these prompts as spreads or positions in like a tarot spread and see where my intuition takes me. Again, it just depends on the mood. But I definitely think it's really important to give yourself that opportunity to check in with how you're doing spiritually and making sure that you're meeting those spiritual needs through connecting with your intuition. So, do you do any sort of personal reflection? Let me know if you have some sort of technique. Maybe you like to journal or use tarot as well. Maybe use something else, oracle cards similarly, or runes, or like automatic writing is sort of similar to journaling. All sorts of different things you can do to check in with your spiritual health. But maybe you want to try out some of these questions that I mentioned. So my next thing that I like to do, one of the 5 activities to take care of my spiritual health, is what I call taking tea and 10. So each morning, this is really important. It's like a non-negotiable for my day. Each morning as I prepare my tea, like I said, tea is very important to me. So I definitely make sure that throughout the day I'm drinking tea, but I have a very specific ritual of 10 minutes of focused meditation with my tea. And this is sacred to me. So like I said, non-negotiable, has to happen, or my day is just not going to go the way that I want it to. So I start out with a space on my counter that is sacred, and I keep it clean and tidy. And this is my designated tea preparation area. Each night before bed, I put my teapot in that space on my counter, and usually I make like a crystal grid around it. Mostly I like crystals for energy and for joy. But it just depends on what I want for the next day. That depends. It could be something else, but usually it's for energy and joy. Sometimes I'll use moon water for this specific practice of tea and 10, but if I don't have any, then I'll just use regular filtered water. And I prepare the tea as usual. I heat the water in my kettle. I pour it over the tea. Usually I drink Earl Grey, but sometimes I'll shake it up a little bit. And once the tea is ready, I take it to this space in my carpet. I have a carpet that has like a concentric circle design, and I like to sit right in the middle of that space with my teapot. I look out the windows at the way the sky is changing in the morning, watch the birds. There's this flock of birds that lives in the tree in the courtyard outside our window, and so I like to watch them, see what they're doing, and I just pay attention to the tea. So I smell it, I taste it, I look at the steam, I look at the color, really focus in, and give myself 10 minutes, at least. Sometimes it's a little bit more, but it has to be at least 10 minutes with my special tea and my special teacup, and watching the world change. And I think it's really challenging for a lot of people to give themselves even just 10 minutes to check in. A lot of us are overscheduled. We are doing work tasks. We have a to-do list. We have responsibilities with our friends and our family and work and all of that. And this kind of feels like unproductive time, which is terrible that we feel like we have to be productive all the time. But when you do take this time that feels unproductive, it can kind of feel selfish, and I get that. So just remember that in the long run, if you don't give yourself a break, if you don't give yourself even 10 minutes every day to just check in and care for, having a break, then eventually this leads to burnout, and burnout results in even more unproductive time, so that's worse. So trust me, I've been there. Burnout isn't fun. So give yourself, 10 minutes or more if you can each day. Maybe you want to incorporate tea into this like I do, or maybe coffee if you're a coffee drinker, or just sitting in meditation for 10 minutes to help you kind of refocus and give yourself a break. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the morning. Some people have really busy mornings. It could be at some point during work if you have like a lunch break, giving yourself this time. But so let me know, do you have a ritual like this where you take 10 minutes, maybe with tea? Maybe you want to try my idea with tea. And Lori says, can't pour from an empty cup. Totally, and that's definitely a good analogy for this teapot, tea and 10 thing that I'm talking about. You can't pour from an empty cup. This is something that is talked a lot about in like self-care, where you can't, if you don't have anything in your cup, you can't give to someone else. So it's sort of the same thing as like you're burning out because you don't have anything to give. You're not filled up. So fill yourself up with tea or coffee or whatever, and take your tea and 10 every day. So the next activity that I like to try to do pretty regularly is to build a ritual. And ritual is really just anything. It's a fancy word for doing doing something for a specific purpose and how you actually do that. And ritual is also a way to separate your magic from your mundane activities, so any like spiritual or magical workings from just day-to-day activities. And I love mixing mundane and magic. I think that's really important, to find the magic in the everyday moments. But I still think that ritual is really valuable, and it plays an important role in my spiritual well-being as well. And I think the best thing about spirituality is that it's totally unique to each person. Like, I like that you can really celebrate your uniqueness by honoring the things that are really important to you and that bring you joy. And ritual is one of those really great ways to do this. So one of the spiritual rituals that I like to do is to build a shrine to myself, which may sound kind of conceited or weird maybe, but it's all about gratitude and reminding yourself of what blessings you have, and doing this in a really visual way. You know, your sense of sight is super strong. It's one of your strongest senses. And if so when you have this visual shrine to yourself, you see it frequently. And so I have collected things that represent things that I'm proud of, things that bring me joy, collect them on a shelf in my home, and I've set it in a place that is easy for me to see. My Alexa just started talking. But I set it in a place that's easy for me to see daily, but won't get in the way of, you know, the day-to-day activities, cooking and cleaning and just living in my space, but I can see it. And the ritual part of this is, first of all, actually setting up the shrine. So, you know, gathering these things in sort of a reverent way, cleansing the space, making it really special, thinking about each item as you place it intentionally, really designing it so that it's visually pleasing. So all of this stuff goes into the ritual, but also part of the ritual is revisiting the shrine. And each time you visit, it doesn't have to be daily, but it could, you know, weekly or monthly, you go back to it and you think about each of those things that you've collected and why they're important to you and how they bring you joy. And then as your story changes and as your focus changes, you can remove items or add items depending on where you are. If something isn't as important to you anymore, you might want to take it away. Or maybe you bring a new pet into your house or a new plant, or you have a baby or you get married or something like that. Something changes in your life, you might want to bring that into your shrine. So things change, and that's part of the ritual, is like reflecting that in your shrine. So if you have a ritual that you do, that you honor yourself, I'd love to hear about it. Let me know what matters to you. And what do you think of this idea of building a shrine? Do you think it sounds sort of conceited or selfish, or do you understand where I'm coming from? Amy says, hey, I feel like I haven't watched one of your Fab Chats in forever. That's because we haven't had a Fab Chat in forever, but thank you for describing it that way, Amy. I appreciate it. Okay, so we have 2 more activities that I want to share with you, or practices, I guess, for the last 2. So grounding and centering is the next one. And technically these are 2 separate practices, grounding and centering, but most people, myself included, practice grounding with centering, as almost as if it is one practice. But again, technically they are separate. So grounding, I'll talk about it in more detail, but basically you're letting go of the energy that's sort of built up and is excess, and centering is bringing energy to you and reflecting on what is your energy. And so I don't want to bring all of my energy back to like a cluttered body. So that's why I practice them together, but you don't have to, like they definitely can be practiced separately. So I'm actually going to pour myself some tea while we're sitting here, because speaking of tea, this is me shaking it up because I am not drinking Earl Grey. It's too late in the afternoon. Okay, so grounding is, this term of grounding, it comes from the process of grounding an electrical circuit. On a basic level, if an object is negatively charged, grounding is how you allow excess electrons to flow from the object into the earth. And if an object is positively charged, the electrons can flow from the earth into the object. So in this way, grounding is how you can balance the flow of energy, the positive and the negative charge, and you find this equilibrium. So the same thing, you can do the same thing as a witch or an energy user or a magic practitioner, whoever you relate as. Practice grounding as a way to balance your personal energy. And I think this is super important, maybe even vital, a requirement of any sort of magical practice, and doing so safely, because throughout your day, your energy becomes imbalanced. And this is for a variety of reasons. It's just like something that happens. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It's just any sort of emotional turmoil or any sort of magical workings like divination or lucid dreaming. If you become sick, that can cause an imbalance. Spell work, astral travel, and just day-to-day activities. Anything you do throughout your day, going to work, interacting with people, visiting places. So all of that can lead you to having too much energy or too little energy. Again, some people gain energy from being around people, some people lose energy from being around people, so it really depends on your personal needs of what you need from the world. But so you might end up with too little or too much energy. And since everything you do is magic and magic is energy, grounding is how you can kind of bring balance back to that and put your energy back into alignment. And I think it's just the greatest tool to have in your witchy toolbox. And I like to do it frequently, try to do it daily, but sometimes, slip a little bit. But grounding does help me to reconnect with my purpose, and I always feel better after doing it. So it's one of those things I wish I did more often. But after grounding, I like to center, and this is one of the best ways that I have found to understand my energy, because it allows you to see the difference between your energy and what's happening in the environment around you, what's not your energy. And so it helps you to reinforce that connection to yourself, like bringing the energy into focus and helping you to find balance and knowing what that feels like. More importantly, knowing what being in balance feels like, which is another reason to do centering after grounding, because in grounding, you have brought balance and alignment to your energy field, and centering can bring your attention to what that actually feels like. I like to think of centering as cleaning up your house after not cleaning up your house for a while, maybe several weeks, where you haven't been putting things away. So you might have unfinished projects, you might have some dishes around, you might have some unpacked shopping bags. All of these material possessions, they belong somewhere in your house, but you haven't put them away. And I think it's the same with energy. You have some things out, and they're just not where they're supposed to be, your energy. So when you experience these extreme emotions, sometimes that happens, or when you're spreading your focus too far apart, you're spreading yourself too thin between all of your responsibilities, work, your kids, your family, bills, your errands, your to-do list, all of the things that are going on in your mind. Or when you use your energy for magic, all of these different things, little bits of your energy can become detached and they're not put away. So you want to center to help call back and reattach all of those bits of energy. And this just helps you feel full, whole again, or full. And then when you center, you get in touch with your true self, your spirituality, your emotions, your thoughts, your creativity. You can put things into perspective. So centering is also very important. I think everyone ought to do both grounding and centering. Of course, everybody is different and maybe it's not for you, but I think they're super important. So do you practice grounding and centering? Let me know if you do. What practices do you use? There are lots of different ways to ground and center. Probably for grounding, one of the most common ways is through a tree, like basically pretending that you're a tree and your roots growing into the ground. But I won't get into that right now. We'll talk about that later. So I'll just tell you about the final spiritual activity that I like to do. Let me check in. I saw some comments. Hi, Cece. Amy says, cheers, making my afternoon coffee to enjoy while I listen. Awesome. And Cece tagged someone. Thanks. Thank you. Okay, so my final activity for spiritual wellness is, for me, a non-negotiable. It's super important to me, and that is meditation. I think it's the base of any solid magical practice, and meditating regularly really does influence your magic and just your overall well-being in a really positive way. So this is when you meditate, basically you can calm your mind enough to connect with your inner wisdom. So when you have all these things running around in your head, you're distracted from what's really going on, and you can't hear your wisdom, you can't hear your intuition. And so meditation is how you can be clear on what you actually want. And you can cut through your ego, you can cut through anything that stands in the way of what you truly desire, what you want to manifest, and you can get past the things that you feel like you should be doing based on what society is telling you, or your family or your parents or whoever is telling you should be doing, or yourself. You could have these doubts or limitations that are holding you back from what you really want. So it also helps you to shift your thoughts, and like I said, you have all these thoughts running through your head and they can be distracting, but you can, through meditation, you can start to shift through those thoughts and find the ones that are beneficial, that will lead you toward your vision and to reach your goals, and you can shift, or you can sift out all of the thoughts that don't belong to you, all the ones that you don't need, that aren't helpful, that are distracting, that you've maybe picked up from someone else, or they're part of a story that you don't tell yourself anymore, that you've moved on from, or that you're trying to move on from. So all of these thoughts, you want to sift through them and find those thoughts that are beneficial, so that you're not focusing on any of your fears and your doubts that hold you back, but you're focusing on the things that will empower you to move forward. So with meditation, you begin to become aware of those thoughts. You become an observer of those thoughts without judgment. That's a really key part of meditation, as well as not judging the thoughts, but just observing them. And you can start to focus on the ones that you really do want to pay attention to. And another really cool thing about meditation is that it supercharges your psychic abilities as well. So maybe you have psychic messages that come through visions, or you hear them, or you just have like a sense of knowing. But when you meditate, you have this really clear channel for those messages to come to you. And without that clear channel, without having that meditation where you've cleared your mind for that, you might miss out on something super important. So I won't get into the how-tos of meditation today, but just know that it's really beneficial for witches and other magic users. Ideally, I would meditate for 20 minutes every day, and I do meditate every day, but sometimes I don't get the full 20 minutes in. And I know it's really hard to prioritize things like meditation because, there's some things that feel more important, but I think it's really important to aim for at least 5 minutes every day, or 5 minutes, 3 times a week at least. And I think you'll notice a huge difference in your overall well-being, and especially your spiritual well-being. So, do you meditate? Let me know. How often do you meditate? How long do you meditate for? Are you trying to get into a meditation practice, but you don't know how? Let me know, and maybe I can chat with you and give you some tips and tricks. So I'm seeing some more comments. Cece says, yes, grounding before homeschooling daily with the children in our backyard. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And Annette says, hi. Hi, Annette. Cece says, we do ground. Oh, yeah, you said that. Thank you. Centering and meditation is necessary. Yes, daily meditation. I'm so glad you agree, Cece. That's awesome. I'm glad that you have that part of your practice, and I think that's so beautiful that you are grounding with your kids with the children you homeschool in your backyard. So those are my 5 ways to keep up with my spiritual wellness. I hope you have maybe found something that you would like to add to your wellness routine or something like that. So they're personal reflection, TN10, building a ritual, grounding and centering, and meditation. And if you came in a little bit late, don't worry, there's a replay. It will come on as soon as I hit the end button. It'll be a little bit of a delay, but you can watch the replay and see those beginning tips that I talked about. You can skip ahead about a minute probably because I did some finagling with my video. But anyway, I also have a gift for you. It's an ebook that you can get from my website, www.mumblesandthings.com, /meditation-ebook. So I'll add that to the description so you can go find that. It's just a copy of a meditation ebook, How to Focus Your Mind, a guide for meditation techniques for witches. So I hope that you'll go check that out, get that download, and I loved chatting with you guys. I hope to be back doing this again soon. I will talk to you later. Bye!